Japan has universal healthcare, one of the longest life expectancies in the world. A society that takes pride in order, cleanliness, and looking after its people. So, riddle me this. Why do nearly 3 out of 4 Japanese people experiencing a mental health disorder never receive treatment at all? This week, we're looking at mental health in Japan. That gap between need and care, the stigma that keeps people silent, and whether anything is actually changing. Later, journalist Aki Shibuya joins me with a perspective you won't often hear. I'm Jeff Richards. This is Japan Today Spotlight. Let's get into it. Let's start with numbers, because the scale of this problem is genuinely hard to believe. Japan recorded roughly 22,000 suicides in 2022. That's about 60 people every single day. And while that number has come down from a peak of more than 34,000 in 2003, it remains one of the highest rates among wealthy nations. Here's another number that should stop you cold. Studies suggest only about 29% of Japanese people with a mental health disorder receive treatment. That's less than 1 in 3. In a country where you can see a doctor for almost nothing out of pocket. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare reported that in fiscal 2024, more than 1,000 recognized cases of overwork-related illness involved mental health disorders. We've covered karoshi, death by overwork, in a previous episode of Japan Today Spotlight. But what we didn't cover is what happens to the people who don't die, the ones who are struggling quietly and have nowhere to turn. So what happens when someone in Japan decides they need help? If they take that step, they'll most likely end up in a psychiatrist's office. And in Japan, that almost always means one thing: a prescription. Talk therapy, the kind of one-on-one counseling that's standard in much of the Western world, is largely absent from Japan's mental health system. Japanese psychiatrists receive very little training in psychotherapy, and because they're carrying enormous caseloads, the time simply isn't there for therapeutic work. So, the path of least resistance for the doctor and the patient is medication. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has actually been officially recognized in Japan as an effective treatment and is technically covered under the national health insurance system. But there's a catch. Trained psychologists can't deliver it independently. They need to be supervised by a psychiatrist. And psychiatrists are already stretched thin. So a treatment that exists on paper is effectively out of reach for most people here in practice. TEL, the Tokyo English Lifeline, has been working in this space for more than 50 years. In a statement to us, TEL said, "The system's limitations have contributed to a greater reliance on medication-based treatment, leaving many people unaware that effective options beyond medication even exist." The numbers on the professional side are telling. Japan has around 10.5 psychiatrists per 100,000 people, roughly in line with other wealthy nations. But unlike psychiatrists, who are medical doctors and can prescribe medication, psychologists and counselors are the people trained to deliver talk therapy. And Japan has just 2.2 of them per 100,000 people. The United States has 49.5. Australia, 36. That's not a gap. That's a different system entirely. Private therapists do exist in Japan, particularly in Tokyo, but sessions typically run between 5,000 and 15,000 yen for 45 minutes and aren't covered by insurance. For most people, that cost is simply out of reach. Even if the system were better equipped, More counselors, more talk therapy, better insurance coverage. There's another barrier the numbers alone just can't capture. In Japan, asking for help with your mental health carries a weight that it simply doesn't in most Western countries these days. It can mean admitting weakness, bringing shame on your family, risking your reputation at work. There's a word in Japanese that gets at something really important here: gaman, or enduring hardship without complaint. In many contexts, that's an admirable quality, but when it comes to default response to depression, anxiety, or burnout, it can be devastating. TEL's statement to us put it plainly. Cultural values that emphasize endurance, perseverance, and self-reliance make it difficult for people to talk openly about mental health or to seek support at all. The result is that many people try to manage on their own. One study found that around 80% of people in Japan diagnosed with a mental disorder hadn't received any mental health services in the previous 12 months. The fear of being found out by colleagues, by neighbors, by family keeps many people silent. Around 40% of the people who call TEL's English Lifeline are Japanese. Vicky Scorgi, senior advisor with TEL, told us that some callers have lived or studied abroad and struggle to fit back in when they return. Some are biracial, some find it easier to express their pain to a foreigner, feeling they'll be better understood. And some, in her words, feel ashamed for letting their society down. There's a practical dimension too. Japan's Japanese language crisis lines are overwhelmed. Callers can face 40 to 60 attempts before getting through to someone. TEL's English line, smaller, less congested, becomes reachable when the Japanese system isn't. The language barrier, usually an obstacle, becomes a kind of shelter, a way to talk about pain once removed from the culture that taught them not to. I'm joined now by journalist and former NHK World presenter Aki Shibuya. She's got a story that I think gets right to the heart of everything we've been talking about here.
When I think about how mental health has been viewed in Japan, I always come back to the story of Empress Masako. In 2004, Japan's current empress, then Crown Princess Masako, was diagnosed with adjustment disorder after years of pressure adapting to life inside the imperial household. The reaction was mixed. Some commentary was harsh, treating her need to step back as a failure of duty. But many Japanese people sympathized with her too. I remember talking about it with my friends at the time, just imagining the change of life after giving up a career as a diplomat and entering the imperial household. No more walking into a convenience store, buying cup noodles or whatever. The simple things we associate with ordinary life completely lost. Her husband, now Emperor Naruhito, did something almost unheard of. He spoke out publicly, saying there had been efforts to deny Masako's career and her character. Even so, criticism never completely disappeared. Mental illness isn't always visible. And when people can't see it, there can be a tendency to question whether someone is really suffering or simply avoiding their responsibilities. At the time, support also came from outside Japan. In 2006, the Dutch royal family invited Masako and her family to spend time in the Netherlands during her recovery. The emperor and empress visited the Netherlands again, continuing a relationship that began during that difficult time. And that part of the story has always stayed with me. Sometimes people find it easier to open up when they're outside the environment that made them feel they had to stay silent. Masako's story was unique. But I think the questions it raised about mental health, expectations, and the pressure to endure are ones that many people in Japan still recognize today.
So, is anything actually changing? The honest answer is slowly and unevenly. Japan has mandated companies with more than 50 employees to conduct annual mental health stress checks since 2015. But a 2023 Japan Productivity Center survey told a different story. Nearly 40% of companies reported mental health issues on the rise among their workers, and young people in their teens and 20s were most affected at a record high. Telehealth counseling options have expanded in recent years, and conversations about anxiety, burnout, and depression are becoming more visible in workplaces, in schools, and in online spaces. That doesn't mean the stigma has disappeared, but the conversation is no longer happening entirely behind closed doors. That's important because before people seek help, they have to believe it's acceptable to ask for it. Tell's statement points to what meaningful progress would actually look like. Improved access to affordable evidence-based therapies like CBT, strengthening mental health literacy, and reducing that stigma. Not as aspirational goals, but as concrete, achievable steps that other countries have already taken. The numbers in this episode are sobering. The one that stays with me is the simplest one. Nearly 3 out of 4 people with a mental illness in Japan never get help. If you or someone you know is struggling, Tell, the Tokyo English Lifeline, offers free phone and chat counseling in English 24 hours a day. Their number is 0357740992. You can also find them at telljp.com. As usual, more details and sources are in the show notes below. And from the Japan Today newsroom here in Tokyo, I'm Jeff Richards.
I'm Aki Shibuya.
See us next time.